Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation in our series on seeking harmony. Today, we are looking at the topic of cancel culture and exploring it at a little bit of a deeper level. We'd like to invite you to please share your thoughts, experiences, even just any insights or questions that you may have around our topic. And so one of the things that probably stood out for me around the concept of cancel culture was something that kind of struck me was, I've been hearing about it and reading about it, but not necessarily paying attention to it, because it almost felt like the social media fad kind of space. So yeah, that was my primary thought as we delved deeper into this topic in our conversation in Discord. So I just want to check in with the team. How have you experienced it? Because for me, it wasn't something that I would have thought of exploring. It wasn't something that was topical for me. And in exploring it, there are very interesting nuances to it. So yeah, I just want to open that up to the team and see what you know about it and where, like, has it even registered for you yet?
I'll start. Okay, so I'm a millennial, so cancel culture is kind of part of my, I'm not gonna say world because that's a lie. I'm gonna say it's part of the culture, the egotistical culture, if that makes sense. And what I do know about cancel culture is it's a way of, how would I explain cancel culture? Because when I think of cancel culture, what comes up for me is, celebrities doing something dumb or idiotic, and, it stops there. I was going to say stop their bag, but I don't think anyone's going to understand what that means. It's going to stop their abundance, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's what came up. That's what's coming up for me when I think about cancel culture. Yeah, if I say stop their bag, no one's going to understand what I'm saying. So yeah.
Stopping their resources, maybe.
Nah, that doesn't sound like
support. No,
because resources sounds like support, and supporting is like,
maybe,
well,
yeah.
It's kind of, but I mean, it's not
kinda.
something I would say, but.
I mean, yeah, losing sponsorships and support from their community and things like that. I think it could encompass like the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, for me, it's kind of tricky because I'm not on Twitter that often. And a few years ago, I felt like cancel culture was, I don't want to say good, but almost, because it was like holding YouTubers and celebrities, like influencers and people like that, accountable for mistakes they had done and that they were not taking responsibility for. And then I realized throughout the years that, I mean, people want to cancel everyone and everything for a lot of reasons, and it goes out of hand pretty quickly, and it's kind of aggressive,
Yeah.
to be honest. And then I was like it extends to all this corporate field of like brands and CEOs and I mean, like, what is it even anymore? Like 2 days ago, I saw that Doja Cat was in a country in Latin America, and there was like kind of a hurricane or a storm, basically. And so she canceled her show or a meetup with her fans so that everyone could be safe. And so people who stand there, like fans,
I know what you're talking about. Okay.
got out on the streets before her hotel and stayed there, camped there, and canceled her on Twitter because she would not go out in the middle of a storm. It's
So stupid. So
I was like, so this is what this has come to. I thought that as millennials and Gen Z being more aware of the things that are going on in the world, I thought that before like cancel culture was even like an expression or word, I thought it was a great way to hold people accountable and open a discussion on things that were not discussed before. and then it got all this negative meaning, and I was like, oh, this is too bad, and also this is cringy and kind of violent, which is I think linked to what we're going to talk about today. This violence that people, this aggression that people want to infuse in this feels uncomfortable. So that is my kind of storyline with cancel culture, basically.
yeah, one thing you said that I agreed with before, I thought like similar to what you said, holding, these, elite status, quote unquote, individuals accountable for their actions. Because when I thought of cancel culture, I think of when Trump was doing his presidency run, he was technically canceled. Like a few people like stopped sponsoring him once they started seeing his true colors. He lost a few of his properties and things like that. Properties, when I say like his hotel chains, where like he lost some places, and I remember there was a what's the word? There was a Black Lives Matter monument painted in front of one of his establishments. That's how like serious it got. And now it's like so, like you said, it's so dumb. Yeah. Because when you said Doja Cat, I didn't really think that someone like they canceled her. I just thought it was just internet trolling. Because I don't think they're ever really canceled. They're just being petty. That's what I think about it. I just think they're just being petty people having fun, making jokes. Because obviously she's gonna make a new show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's very much like called cancel culture, but also people have explained that it lost its meaning because it doesn't really affect the career of people so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's almost kind of good because the way it was done, like you can't upend the life of someone like that, basically, and upend all its support. And like you're not God, you're not going to do justice there. Basically, you can hold them accountable, you can stop your support if you do not agree with them. But like trashing them on the internet, I think it's very linked to trolling. Like cancel culture has become something that is linked to trolling and internet trollers and people that are irrational and maybe fans and people that go too far and don't have boundaries and respect in how they communicate their thing. So yeah, I think it got called cancel culture, and then pretty much as soon as it got called cancel culture, people were like, oh, but people don't really suffer the consequences of it. And it's so complex because you're like, oh, someone who did something really bad doesn't suffer any consequences, and that sucks. And wow, cancel culture doesn't do anything for us. And on the other side, people who didn't do anything or got judged by the internet for a little mistake would
Yeah.
have to suffer through big consequences just for cancel culture. So there's this like question of where is the balance, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's very much what we referred to when we were talking in the chat this week. Like, where is the balance? Why are there sides? Like, I think we can go deeper into that.
But personally speaking, I can't really say I take cancel culture seriously. I just take it as a temporary joke. Yeah, I don't take it seriously.
Yeah, so like as you guys are sharing, and the thing that kind of comes up for me is this energy of accountability and being held accountable. And I almost have the feeling that as a result of a catchphrase like cancel culture, people probably are more likely to behave in a negative way as opposed to a positive way. So for me, that cancel culture thing, it's almost, and again, I think it's what you guys said, like it's almost tantamount a little bit to trolling, because there are no real consequences for doing something like that. So there is quite a bit of energy of avoiding accountability or being allowed to avoid accountability. So yeah, it's literally like literally the two sides of that coin. It's like, one, yes, it's good to highlight it, but then two, also, is it doing damage or is it doing good? And if it's doing damage, what kind of recourse or accountability is there really in the space of social media allowing that type of what other people would say, well, it's my freedom of speech, but your freedom of speech could very easily negatively impact somebody. And we have seen throughout history that freedom of speech has been one of those really hard-won rights, and people really had to fight for it. And now there's this energy of a generation almost to an extent squandering it. So, there's a lot of counter arguments and components to it that kind of come into play, and the melting pot of it is what sits at the core. Like, what does it actually achieve? And further, what is the intention behind it? Because sometimes I just find that action flows out of intent, but we need to understand or explore intent to understand and explore that action or behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question so I can get it clear just on what you're saying?
Yeah, so I'm like, for me, the sense is just how much does it contribute to holding people accountable and to people following through or accepting their accountability, in the sense that they're saying what they want to say when they want to say it, and there are no real consequences. And maybe that's what you were speaking to, in the sense that you said, I sometimes just think it's a joke. I don't pay much attention to it. And if that's the case, is there really a purpose to it?
I would say maybe it depends on how it's being portrayed exactly. Like if it's something that is surrounding like a really serious cause, like something in the sense of, like supporting hate or inequality, something just completely out of love. But with the other spectrum being something being just a trolling perspective. That's what I mean when I say I look at it as a joke when it comes to that spectrum. Now, when it comes to the spectrum of it being intentional, I do believe that it holds individuals accountable for their actions.
Okay, so my sense is that it holds some people accountable because they are more public, and the people holding them accountable are not necessarily being held accountable for their message or for what their message creates in social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that kind of fine balance and almost tipping of the scale in that, yes, I hold you accountable, but how accountable am I for my actions and my behavior and the message that I'm putting out there?
Are you speaking of the person as being canceled per se?
No, so I'm speaking about the person that's actually participating in the canceling.
So you're saying, are they being held accountable for their actions?
Yes. How do they get held accountable? You know, if we're going to talk about, and really it stems from, yes, there are significant things that happen that is good for awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes it gets taken to the extent of trolling behavior. And how are those trolls held accountable for their behavior? And do we, as a society, pay attention to that kind of thing?
I'm starting to get what you mean. And yeah.
Well, when I think of, okay, another situation is coming up for me. So a few months ago, there was a situation with this like really famous rapper, and he said something in the sense of bashing the LGBTQ community. And he was technically by definition canceled by the culture. You know, he lost a bunch of sponsorships, and festivals pulled his name out of their, you know, performing slots because they saying that they don't support anything or like everything and anything that he portrayed and gave off to the public to promote himself. So when you say, do I think that the person doing the canceling, you know, their thing held themselves accountable? I'd say yes, because they're protecting I would say protecting their love for their, I'm not going to say consumers because that sounds so superficial, but I'm going to say protect who they are and what they stand for, and let people know that
I accept and that I agree with you. I'm talking about the point at which that behavior of calling somebody out becomes trolling, and in that trolling results in some or other type of violence being perpetrated against people and that kind of thing. I'm not looking at the middle of the road, like it almost achieved a reasonably healthy objective. I'm looking at the way it's gone to the extreme. And how does that bode well for this kind of concept? Because it loses its efficacy. The more that kind of thing happens in terms of resulting in violence, resulting in attacks, the more I feel like it loses the ability to be a useful tool.
I want to say, like, can we deconstruct what happened on Sunday at the Oscars? Because like
Yeah, well, you want to talk about that?
Maybe I feel like
I
it would
want to talk about that because that could result
it could illustrate the concepts.
I don't think that would
canceling
count.
itself.
I don't think that one would count. I don't
I
think
don't
that,
know. I don't know. Well,
because
let's
because I feel that situation was something that happened between two people who knew each other, and that it was just public. I don't know if we can touch that with cancel culture. That sounds, it's too
and
not that.
that's part of the point, I feel. So like I'm gonna talk about it, like let's unpack it and maybe we'll see if we have lessons, because when Randall was talking about people talking about it being accountable to, I thought of this situation. And I think it's even more important to talk about it because of like the proportions it took in the last 2 days. And basically like Chris Rock made a joke on Jada, not only like her hairstyles, but the fact that there is also the fact that she lost her hair due to medical condition. Will Smith responded in an aggressive way. And instead of holding Chris Rock accountable for his joke and resolving this peacefully, I don't know if it would have been resolved peacefully if Will Smith didn't intervene, because like that's the internet is. But it concentrated the whole thing on Will Smith's gesture instead of what it truly was. And worst of all, like even that is messy, but people, the fact that they took sides and are saying like, who are we canceling? Like, is there any, even like asking if we are going to cancel people, Oscars are trying to hold them accountable for their misconduct, especially Will Smith. And people are, it's escalating to this debate on people who are not like inside this trio, who doesn't know the full situation. But it was so public that there is this debate, and then there are jokes. And so it feels like there is more drama and clout around it at what it could truly have been. Like, where is the true accountability there? How can we analyze what was said, how it was taken, what's the responsibility of Chris Rock? Because there is all these things, like we don't really know what was at the core. And that I agree with you. And yeah, go ahead.
You don't know. I was gonna wait till you're done so I can explain what happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Okay, so this whole thing was a buildup from what happened about 6 years ago. This was because there was a boycott towards the Academy Awards for their award ceremony not including people of color. So apparently that year, you know, Jada, Will's wife, was the administrator for this boycott, and a lot of people were supporting her on it. So because Chris Rock was contacted by Jada to do this, he took it upon himself to publicly make a joke about joining her boycott at this Oscar ceremony, ridiculing the movement of what was trying to be taken seriously. And he took it as a joke and pretty much ridiculed their entire family. And they didn't say anything. They just like kept it in all this time. And it was a buildup for about 6 years. And then Will and Jada get invited to the Oscars. It's still a build-up. No one's apologized or anything for what they said. And you disrespected the man's wife. She has a health condition that she cannot control, and that's kind of hurtful. It wasn't a harmless joke. So he reacted. I don't know why. I'm not gonna say he deserved it, but I mean, it was kind of a meet you where you are situation, but it just came back more aggressive. So I don't agree with any of this at all, but it's just that's just what it was.
I know, and I think a lot of people think that maybe half the people think that it's a meet you where you are situation, and half the people think it was like not respectful. And the thing is, like, we've talked this past few weeks about a meet you where you are situation. And I can't say from what we know that having a back end slap was a meet you where you are situation. Because it was physical and the other one was not physical. And that's the sad thing, like, about the laws of spirituality and life. It's that the most peaceful person will win. And Will Smith, it's so sad to say that, because
Yeah,
Chris Rock was so disrespectful, even though I didn't know that there was like all this thing with Oscars so right 6 years ago. It was already so disrespectful that that could have been addressed in a different way. But like the fact that it did that puts him in the position of a loser right now. And it's super sad to say it, but it's true, I think.
It's super sad to say what exactly?
To say that he lost like this conflict because of this response.
That Will lost it? That's what you say?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so
I think they both lost in the situation because they both made themselves look silly, and unfortunately Will fell for it, and because he could have just took his Oscar and went home.
But in the world, especially in the United States, where roasting is accepted, people might have not made the difference between a joke that was really personal and hurtful, and because it was made on Jada's person, not on her career compared to like her other peers. And that is something that we, especially as Black people, know, but other people might not know. And this could have been an opportunity to educate them, I feel. And so
when you say
maybe
what do you mean exactly?
Hmm?
When you say educate them, what exactly do you mean by that?
Educate them, like.
So I like this conversation. I just think we need to get a little bit more specific here. So we are talking about cancel culture. We're talking about two situations that could result in people being canceled. But what we're not talking about is the fact that by cancel culture standard, Will Smith's behavior would probably get him cancelled faster than Chris Rock if we go specifically on the violence. Then you bring in the past of 6 years and you have to wonder, well, from everything that we've seen in the media around Jada healing and Will healing, where did their healing take them to that as a man, he would walk up onto a world stage and slap somebody? Because the fact of the matter is, for me, is there seems to be a healing component. There's a healing component in how the masculine shows up. Both these masculines have not showed up in what we as unionists, having gone through healing processes, would say are showing up from a healing point or a healed point of view. So the dichotomy makes it difficult. The core of it for us is, does this highlight that healing is required in the global divine masculine? The call for consciousness, from consciousness to say, actually, divine masculines, heal thyself.
I think this is a complex, when it comes to that situation, it's pretty complex, because what I'm seeing is, in a sense, on Chris Rock's side, I'm seeing like a visual of like maybe the divine masculine not protecting the divine feminine in a way, if that makes sense. Like, the divine masculine allowed outside perspectives to hurt the divine feminine. When I say this, I mean Chris allowing the world to ridicule Jada on the movement that was very purposeful and that was trying to heal the consciousness surrounding the Academy Awards. And when I see Will, I'm seeing someone who was doing his best to protect his divine feminine, if that makes sense. And another thing I'll say is, like, maybe it brought up a childhood wound of seeing his mother being domestically beaten by his father. That's what I saw, because he grew up around a household of domestic violence. So I think maybe, disrespecting his wife in front of him, that it brought it up. And I guess, like, instead of healing it and feeling it, it came out in a way that was a little too next level. That's how I'm seeing it. That's the complexity of what I'm seeing.
Thanks for explaining that. And yeah, I feel.
Yeah.
He was definitely triggered. Like,
he was.
You could see it on his face.
Yes.
You could see it on his face, but it was triggered. But I feel like
he was laughing. Originally, he was laughing to cover up. He likes to numb himself. He talks about this all the time. He likes to numb his emotions and use it with humor, unfortunately.
yeah.
And I guess, like, the old way that he tried to cover his emotions didn't work, and it exploded, and people had to see this terrible moment in front of them.
So here's the question. Talking about cancel culture, is numbing not a method of canceling yourself?
Me? I don't know. I think cancel.
Maybe I can see that. Yes, numbing your feelings can be considered cancel culture for yourself, because you're not choosing God.
Yeah, and you can't trick people. Like, they're responding to what they feel is attack, and in this situation, like, there was violence and aggression, and cancel culture is responding more and more with aggression. So I think it's escalating. So in responding like that, it was already escalating the situation. I feel, yeah, that could be the core of cancel culture, like this violence, this aggression, this perceived aggression is what triggers people and make a situation mount, I think.
Yeah, because, like, one of the things that I've kind of uncovered through my coaching studies and just through the healing work that we've done, through being coached in Twin Flames Universe and by Ascension coaches and going through the classes ourselves, is that anger is generally the biggest sister of sadness and hurt. And so we see this anger playing out as a result of being triggered, but we know that the person with the most peace generally has the most power. One of the things I've learned is that the person with the greatest flexibility has the greater amount of control or power in a situation. And it is simple, it's really that simple, because as opposed to quickly reacting to the trigger, you're kind of unpacking the trigger and choosing how to respond, choosing to sit in your power, choosing to know that you have the power of choice. So was this a situation of somebody giving away their power because they chose to react in that way, or was that a choice of reaction, them actually using their power, regardless of whether we think it was a good or bad way to use their power? Was it their choice to use their power in that way?
Oh.
We may never know. I think we don't have a response on it.
I know,
That's
you know,
how I
like
feel.
those are things that kind of play in my mind and go like, well, did he operate in his power?
There's a part of me that wants to say yes, only because I feel that Will Smith was always such a pushover. I feel he was always such a pushover. He let people just get away with saying these really terrible things about him and his family. And I guess he just couldn't take it anymore. And maybe in a way, the slap to Chris was a wake-up call to not be so arrogant when it comes to joke making about other people. That's what I'm seeing. I don't know.
I think there's a need to go deeper spiritually there, because because of all we've learned about how to respond to a troll in this past few weeks, and true power and power built on a foundation of sand, you know. And there's like, I know I've responded to bullies in ways that maybe I'm not proud of today and could have been compared to Will Smith, maybe not in violence, but I was definitely not peaceful. And the only thing that you see afterwards, it doesn't make you feel good. If this is not good, this is not your true power. It was a false power built on the foundation that you had to have that wall and that aggression to survive in a world of trolls and bully. And so the thing is that you can't, even though you have compassion for him, which we all have, you can empathize with this false notion of power built probably on past hurts and ego, because this is not serving him.
Past hurts, yeah, that's what it is. I feel.
And if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about like the article that Jeff shared last week about.
Are you talking about the one we hit with him canceling his Twitter accounts?
No. That's an article about like a consultant on cancel culture in Hollywood, working with big companies and execs, because like millennials and Gen Zs are finally woken up to the red flags of the corporate world and wanted to bring accountability to the workplace and having boundaries. The thing is, I thought, like cancel culture, that this was a super positive thing. at the beginning of the article. And then you go deeper into things like someone threw a pen in the direction of someone's office, and now the execs has to be forced to apologize publicly to that person, and things that are mounting in the ridiculousness of violence and aggression that these people are showing and projecting towards their bosses. And what this is showing us is that cancel culture was not a response to having new boundaries in the corporate world and at work. And nobody had the peace there. So much so that there was to be a new job created just to be the intermediary, the communicator, the messenger between these two classes of people, because she holds the peace and she reminds both the bosses and the employees that they have a choice and communication and flexibility there, and that they can use it to be better in the corporate world. And it's almost like laughable for me and kind of sad, because in France we are at the beginning of like people growing in accountability in the corporate world, and I don't want it to follow that trend of cancel culture that seems to be so rooted on the west coast of the United States, maybe, in terms of culture. And yeah, I mean, like, you can have compassion for like people in their situation, but you must also remind them of what is loving, even though I'm sure the Smiths had so much going on for them. Like this was a harsh thing to leave as a family, and they had like tremendous challenges in their lives already. But leading them, encouraging them on the path of like inappropriate responses would not help them anyway. And maybe this was their lesson, and especially Will Smith's lesson.
Yeah, so just in terms of the article, so I agree with you that there was this kind of progression, but it almost feels like there was a level of the progression getting out of hand. So, like, I've been in HR for 17 years of my 19-year career. And I feel like one of the things that has been a continuous, like, golden thread throughout all of my career is managing relationships in a healthy way. And now we're seeing this concept of cancel culture going into the corporate space. And I have to wonder what has happened that it almost feels like a regression of having healthy relationships in a workplace. And I feel like, for me, if I was in a corporate and somebody reported that, hey, my manager had potentially thrown a pen at me or something to that effect, it would have probably resulted in discipline for the manager. Because regardless of the employee's behavior, the manager is probably because of their position, there's a greater requirement for them in terms of managerial maturity. So manage your people appropriately. discipline your people appropriately, reward your people appropriately. And so if cancel culture now spills over into corporates, then I have to wonder, and then my question would be, why are those corporates not managing those relationships more appropriately? Like, as an employee, you have the duty of care to your employer's property, to your fellow employees. And so by extension, as a manager, you are an extension of the corporate authority. So there is a requirement on you to act in the best interests of the company and the employees. So why then is it necessary to employ a cancel culture coach in a corporate environment? And does that then mean that there's a greater level of healing required at a corporate level? And is that what this concept and what we're seeing play out, telling us what is that's the call? Like, we know there's been a great call for greater stability at an individual level, at a relationship level. That's gonna obviously spill over into a greater consciousness in a team environment, a greater consciousness in a corporate environment. Does it mean that we don't have leaders capable of actually leading?
Maybe. Maybe I think. Oh, you're mute.
That's a complex question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit complex.
What was I gonna say? It's a pattern that we see playing out in so many ways, in so many companies, that I'm tempted to say, yes, there is a pattern there, because we had beginnings of responses in the article, things that I've brought up to my ex-bosses and managers, things that I feel were maybe brought up to people before the generations of Gen Zs that were having this conflict in these companies. And it required a coach, a consultant, for some execs to go, oh, well, like, I guess I could put myself a little bit in their shoes and see how they feel to work on a project that $1 million project that isn't going to go anywhere. And maybe it's a loss of time. Maybe I could put myself in their shoes. Or maybe I could have less control there, thinking that things are going to be done even though I'm going on a vacation for 3 days and I don't have to have anxiety and I don't have to project my anxiety on other people. It required a coach for these big leaders. We're not talking about small companies. We're talking about the
chains,
top tier companies, chains, like best companies in the world, in Hollywood. People not knowing how to manage. Yeah, there is like a rebuilding to do in the way that we see leaders today. And it definitely means that there are some core patterns that we definitely need to look at. Like, our system is good, but it needs fine-tuning, because it's a source of conflict and suffering for people, and a source of like intergenerational triggers that could be avoided if we were healed in this place.
Yeah, it feels to me like there's like the energy I feel when I feel into it is that there's definitely an energy of people saying we will not suffer any longer. And I feel like it's come out of having had to sit still for the last 2 years and experience life through the eyes of COVID, because we really have had to do that. And we've had to take stock of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, and what we will continue to allow in our lives and what we won't continue to allow in our lives. And so as we return to the office in greater amounts or for longer extended periods of time, there is going to be a greater prevalence of awareness of what is okay and what is not okay. My feeling is that it's still an extension of that call for healing. It's an extension of that call for healing at a corporate level as opposed to only an individual level. Individuals have had to pay attention, corporates have had to pay attention in different ways over the last 2 years. And now we're bringing these two sets of people together after a period of time where they've had to pay attention, they've had to sit down, they've had to reassess things, they've had to reshuffle their lives, they've had to reassess what's necessary and what's not necessary. And the core I find in that article is just people are saying enough. We won't accept this. And it's almost a sense of it's younger generations, because again, I feel like from where I come from, where I've grown up, we learned not to question things. We learned to almost be subservient. And now we're seeing that subservience doesn't equal accepting abuse. And so we have these millennials, Gen Zs, there's so many terms, but yeah, just younger generations of employees going, well, it's not okay. I saw how my parents suffered. I saw how my older brothers and sisters suffered, and I refuse to suffer. I refuse to accept things that are not acceptable. And so now we're seeing boundaries being put up through concepts like cancel culture. And the only thing that we kind of need to unpack here is, are those boundaries appropriate and healthy? And what type of healing would be appropriate and healthy under those circumstances? Because bringing cancel culture into corporate opens up a lot of things. It opens up things where managers are much more open to accepting that they need to be coached. And then not only just having the awareness that I need to be coached, but taking the step to invest in coaching or get the company to invest in coaching for them. So there's a duality playing out there as well. That's probably quite beneficial that will be quite beneficial in the long run. So it's a duality of what's appropriate and what's necessary, and then another duality of awareness, acceptance, and then execution that's playing out.
It makes me think of something, a discussion that we had in the chat at the beginning of Seeking Harmony, and maybe we can end there and expand next week if you guys wanna. But it was on like, we're already talking about Russia or China, even though we weren't expecting a war. And we were talking about the hurt in the culture, how people reacted, the story behind their resentment and aggression. And we were talking about like things that were issues of unrest in my country, and specifically on my native island and just said, like, don't respond to it. Basically, don't thrash against it. Like, I think it means to say, like, don't respond, in a violent way. Rise above it, and you will see the response. And I very much think it was a call for my generation to say, like, hey, calm down. We're in a period of peace. We have tools to manage this from our peace, our own power, our rights, our political rights, our rights as human beings with justice. We need to partner with the system. And we also need to transcend the system. And I think it was what I was saying, because I feel what cancel culture is mirroring from my generations, because I'm between the two, is that they feel powerless. So powerless that they would resort to aggression and victim mentality and social media and trolling and abuse and maybe harshness, verbal backlash to find a way to be heard. But the core of our discussion is to realize that we always had the power as people, and the power is not in an armed revolution. This is not like French Revolution and of the 19th century. I don't even know. This is like 2022. We have tools, and we very much have evolved. So we need to transcend this and realize that the tools that we have today can be used for something that is even bigger, bigger than what we realize now, not just like a tools to use to continue in our powerlessness patterns. Yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, that feels good. And that feels like a good place to also conclude our conversation for today. So, Deja, I just want to check in with you. Were you going to share anything further?
No, I was going to say we've hit our hour, but I don't want to stop her.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have hit our hour, and yes, thank you to everybody for joining us. I think Yurine, you wrapped up the conversation quite nicely for us today, so we can definitely take it forward. We also would like to invite everybody to subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find all our previous conversations. And please feel free to share your piece if you have anything that you think is topical that we can explore. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.